Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie, and this is Stephanie Builds Wealth. Welcome back if you've been here before. Welcome if you are new. And on this channel, I want to share my experiences about how I have stumbled across the budgeting and financial literacy community, how I want to share the information that I have so that I can help other people not just to pay off debt and get out of debt, but to understand why it's there, why it affects so many people, understand our background with money, understand our emotions with money, our culture with money, have conversations to make it more acceptable to just be open about finances and money and to stop feeling ashamed of what we don't know or get mad at ourselves because we don't have the tools to do better. So if this sounds like something that you're interested in, feel free to join this journey wherever the heck it goes, because Lord knows in the 4 years I've been doing this, I often thought it was going to go one way and it went completely a different way. So what I would like to do today is I would like to have a story time, and I would like to share the moment that I had I don't know what you call it, my breakthrough moment. So, what was my breakthrough moment that made me want to get serious about this whole concept of financial literacy and learning about money beyond paying bills and making sure you have enough for necessities? So feel free to grab a snack or have a little food, because I'm going to be very open and transparent with you. And I thought about doing a more intimate setting where, I film myself and I talk to you all directly, but because this is talking about a job that I was at, well, my previous career, I don't want to show my face just yet. So get comfortable, grab a snack, pause the video if you need to. So I'm going to get started. And I have a feeling that I'm not the only one who has felt this way. So, what was my breakthrough moment that really triggered and put a fire under my butt about really getting serious about money and financial literacy? Well, it was, I want to say, what was it? It was 2019. And I don't remember if it was summer or fall. I feel like it was in the cusp of the seasonal change. And all of that year, it had been really difficult because when I was hired in 2018, we were doing so well. The hospital system that I worked at was busy, busy, busy. I never had a problem hitting my 80 hours in my paychecks as my base pay. So I didn't really need to do too much of call work or taking other people's call shifts to increase my money or buffer my money. So in January of 2019, the hospital system that I worked at stopped accepting one of the major health insurance carriers. And I don't understand the back office workings of that. I don't work in insurance. I don't work in anything about that. But I worked on the other side of the consequences of those choices, right? I'm sure anyone who has ever worked outside of administration, when people make changes without understanding how it works on the other side, we all feel the effects of that, right? So it was, I want to say, the cusp of summer and fall of 2019. And our hospital system, this is months later, okay, of having to adjust to the new, I hate to say workflow because it was surgery. I was a surgical tech. But it was my job and there was a workflow. Even though we were working on people and doing surgery, there was still a schedule. There was still, the ins and outs of people coming and going. And the majority of what we did was outpatient surgery. So people didn't really stay more than a day. But from the year before, when I was hired, we were just moving and shaking. It was not a concern about getting your pay. You were going to get your 80 hours. It was not even a question. You'd probably get more than that, honestly, because there's so much work. But when we lost that major insurance carrier, our patient load dropped significantly. And as the year went on, we were having more trouble keeping our schedule as full as it was before. And so a lot of people started to take extra call. An extra call in the hospital, if you don't work in medical or healthcare, is when you are assigned call work, which means you work after your shift. Either you have call starting the minute your shift ends till the following morning, or you have 24-hour call on the weekend, and you can be called in and out of the hospital endless times. It's not just once or twice. It's anytime there's an emergency after hours and there's no staffing during regular hours, you're called in. I mean, I've had it before when I was on 24-hour call from Friday night to Monday morning, and I'd get called in at least, 10, 15 times. Many times back to back. I would literally be on my way home and then get called back. So it was a very tedious year, 2019, up until that point. So let's say the cusp of September-ish, August. So it was a really tedious year. A lot of us were getting very worn out, burnt out. We were taking on a lot of extra call on top of working our normal shift because there would be times where there just wasn't enough scheduled surgeries that you could finish your shift. And in the hospital system, it's not a regular 8-hour shift. There are shifts between 8 hours, 10 hours, and 12 hours. I had 4 10s and I worked the worst shift possible, which was, what was it? It was 11 a.m. to I think 9:30 p.m. Yeah, and I was the only one that had that shift. So I was literally there all day. It was terrible. And I remember this one day, my moment. Yet again, it was, I want to say it was Wednesday because I worked 4 10s and I had Thursday off. I don't remember. I know I had Thursday off. That was my actual real day off. It was the only day off that I really had. And then I had call on the weekends. So it must have been a Wednesday. And I thought, you know what? It's only 5 o'clock. I came in at 11. It's only 5 o'clock. We are completely dead. There's still plenty of people that are staying till the 7 p.m. shift. And then after that, there's people that are on call for 3 different specialties. If anything goes crazy, there's more than enough people to staff that random thing. So I went up to the charge nurse and I asked, if I could go. And mind you, at this point, I had been, we collectively as a group had really not been doing anything as far as surgery goes because there were no surgeries scheduled past, I think, 3. And it was 5 o'clock. So this has been 2 hours now of, just busy work, stocking and cleaning. And I had grabbed a blanket out of the warmer and I had gone into one of the OR rooms and I was watching, something on YouTube. And I was looking at the time and I was freezing in the OR room because it's really cold in there. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go ask if I can go. I don't see what the problem is. I've been here for a while. I kind of get the workflow of things. There's plenty of people for backup. It should be okay. So I go up to the charge desk and, pardon me, I'm going to be drinking some kombucha while I tell the story. I went up to the charge nurse station and I asked, hey, is it okay if I leave, we're pretty dead. There's lots of backup should something happen. And I was told no. And I was really shocked by that because usually we were allowed to go with no problem. And I guess the charge nurse was just in a mood that day and just decided to flex her power just because she could say no, so she did. And I was like, really? I can't go. There's so many people around here literally doing nothing because there's nothing to do. And she said, check back with me in a couple hours and we'll see then. And I remember just being really irritated because there really wasn't a reason to keep me there other than she just could say no. So I remember that as I walked away from the nurse's desk, I went down one of the hallways and I grabbed a blanket out of the warmer, and I just was increasingly getting more and more irritated as I walked to an empty OR. We had many ORs, way more than 10 rooms, and I picked some random OR that was empty, and I remember sitting there and the whole time for me walking from the nurse's station all the way down to the room, I was getting more and more irritated, and I thought, you know what? I should be able to just leave. I should be able to just walk out the front door and not have to worry about how I'm being treated. I should be able to just leave. And how irritating is it that me as a grown adult, a professional, with bills and mortgage and taking care of cats, I didn't have any kids, but I was like, how irritating is that as a grown ass adult and a professional, I have to ask permission to just go home and do whatever. Even if I'm watching YouTube videos, I have to ask permission from someone else if I can leave. And then I really started thinking about that. And this is something that we all know, but it's just there. And everyone just sort of accepts and knows because not many people can do much about it. And this has been my problem with being in a bad place financially. Employers know this and they take advantage of that. And they know that you're probably not going to leave, even though if you're unhappy or miserable or frustrated or you don't agree with how they run things, because the majority of people cannot financially afford to just say, you know what, this isn't working out for me. I'm just going to go. I wish you the best and go on about our day. And that really, there was just this fire starting up inside of me and burning. And I was asking myself when I had walked from the desk and I was going all the way down to the hallway to pick a room, I thought, why can't I just walk out the front door and say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore? Why do I have to ask someone permission for me to go home, go to lunch, when I can take holidays, when I can, wake up, when I can go to bed, when I'm allowed to leave work if there's like a crisis, and like we shouldn't be penalized for that. And I thought, I can't just leave because I have a mortgage and I have bills and I have responsibilities to myself and like my family. And I remember, I don't know what exactly the thought was, but I remember thinking that this was a problem. The fact that I was making the most money that I'd ever made in my entire career as a surgical tech, and that I still was at a place where if I just wanted to walk out the door and do something different with my life, I couldn't do that. And I wanted to understand why, because I wanted to figure out how I could learn and fix this so that in the future I could just go if I didn't want to anymore. And so I grabbed a warm blanket out of the heater and I picked an OR room and I started YouTubing just monthly budgets. How can I leave my job? And then it just started going into what budgets were and financial literacy and sinking funds and, various names for things like oh shit funds or bounce funds or I resign funds or something. And I thought, that's what I'm missing. because I don't have any of those things. I don't have sinking funds. I don't have an emergency fund. I don't have a oh shit fund. I don't have a I lost my job and have no income fund. I didn't have any of that. The only thing that I knew of budgeting up on that point to like my mid 30s was I get paid and then I allocate the bills that need to be paid from that paycheck, and then the rest was just whatever money. And it was really frustrating for me in that moment because I had been at that job for about 1.5 years, and I was making the most money that I'd ever made in my over a decade of being a surgical tech. For the first time, it took me that long. It took me over a decade to make that much income. And up until that moment, I didn't really have a clue what I was doing with it. I didn't even know that I was supposed to do something with it. And that is something that I think a lot of people, when you have this breakthrough moment, you realize, wait a second, I'm making XYZ. How come I feel like I'm stuck? Why don't I have more wiggle room in my life? Well, again, it's not a surprise that people aren't taught this in schools, because school is not designed to educate people and free them from the financial system. Debt in this country is it's a multi-billion-dollar industry where companies need people to be in debt to make money off of their debt. They need it. So why would they give you the education and the tools to go ahead and free yourself from those chains, from that rat race? And I remember I was in that OR room and I was watching YouTube video after YouTube video after clip from all these different people, and I was learning these new concepts and new things. And then I think it was 3 hours later, I got a page to call the nurse's station, and then I was told that I could go ahead and leave early. 3 hours of sitting in a room watching videos, and I was being paid to do that. And I know a lot of people would think that's amazing. I would love to get paid to just watch videos. But that's not the point. The point is that there was no need for me to be there, and I was just being told to do something because someone had power over me to do it. And I was not in a financial situation to say, this is not acceptable. I have a boundary with this. Like, I'm not going to have my time wasted with this. 3 hours of watching YouTube videos about finances and educating myself, really just barely scratching the surface. I mean, I wasn't even scratching the surface. I was just getting exposure to things that had never really been explained to me, even though I kind of sort of knew it in the background, amongst miscellaneous random fuzzy conversations with family growing up and mom and dad. And it was always in the background, but it wasn't really explained. And I was just getting exposure to these things. So 3 hours later, I get a page to call the front desk, and they say, yes, you can go ahead and go. And when I tell you that I couldn't leave the hospital fast enough, and I had so much laser focus to get home and really dig through my financial life. So the couple things that I had learned from the videos that I watched is to find out exactly how much debt you're in, and to create a realistic monthly budget. And how you do that is you go through about 3 months worth of expenses and bank statements and credit card statements, and you go through every single item and you create categories. Okay, you create categories for gas, automotive repairs, registration. So you create like an automotive category. You create a category for housing expenses, maintenance, trash bags, cleaning supplies for the house. You create a grocery category, or like a going out food, like a night out dining category. You create an entertainment category for shows and movies, or, a traveling category, or a pets or a kids category, or like a tuition fund or an after school program category. And so I went through and I highlighted each category with a different highlighter color. And then what I did is, once I had enough of a pattern to recognize that I even had enough charges to create a category, I started breaking down categories that I continuously spent on. And if there was a couple highlights for random things, I would allocate them to a category that had similar expenses. And then what I did is I wrote down every single expense that I had that was from the first of the month to the last of the month. And then that is how I created my first monthly budget, because I wanted to know from the first of the month to the last of the month what my bills were, when the bills were due, what the amounts of the bills were, how much I had left over to do groceries, how much I had left over to do house care, maintenance, automotive, pet care, gifts, giving, travel, personal care. And it probably took me about 3 months to fine tune and tweak the monthly budget. And that is something that I want to share, that the monthly budget will never stay the same. Even if you're on a salaried income and you have fixed expenses, it is bound to change because housing costs go up, utilities go up, unexpected things happen, pets get sick, kids get sick, they get hurt, you get sick, travel plans change, costs go up. Like, it's just, you will always be tweaking your budget, if not on a quarterly basis, when things just pop up, especially when you're first crafting what a monthly budget is. You're gonna make changes. So that night when I went home from the hospital, so let's see, it was 5 o'clock when I went to the desk. So 3 hours later, it would be 6, 7, 8-ish. So I got home around 8:15-ish. So from 8:15-ish till about 1 in the morning, okay, 1 in the morning, I was completely consumed with printing out statements for credit cards and my bank statements, and I was highlighting things, and I was discovering categories of where I spent. I had never done this before, and I think I was 35 at the time, 35 years old. And this was the first time I was doing any of this. It was like my brain exploded. It was like a whole new world, okay? I felt like I had somehow unlocked some little cheat code about life. And I thought, oh my God, I'm leveling up here. I have figured something out that leads to more important things. So from like 8:15-ish, I literally went straight upstairs, and my poor cats, they were so excited to see me, and I couldn't give them any attention because I was so hyper-focused on this. I felt so bad. So from 8:15 till about 1 in the morning, I just poured over 3 months worth of bank statements and credit card statements. I was taking highlighters and I was highlighting things, and suddenly categories would start popping up for expenses. And then I started cross-referencing those categories to how my monthly budget was starting to look like. And then from that, I was starting to craft what a monthly budget should look like for me in this season of my life. And at the end of every month, I would go through and see if I was over in a category or under in a category, and then I would readjust. So if I just allocated $200 to groceries every 2 weeks, and I was constantly going over, $50, $60, then I thought, okay, the realistic budget for the basic foods that I get all the time is supposed to be $260. So it's going to be $260. And I keep putting in $20 more into the home category, and it never goes above that. So I need to reallocate that money to something else and be more realistic. And then I started coming up with sinking funds, things that I knew I had expenses for on a irregular basis, but annual or semi-annual, like my car registration. I knew I needed to get my oil changed, once, twice a year, depending apparently on what type of oil you have. I knew I needed to put money aside for that, so I didn't just spend money from the money that was left over like I had been doing before, where I would pay all my bills, and then if I had $600 left over, it was just free money for whatever. Oil change, car registration, buying a new outfit, new shoes, taking care of the cat, getting gifts for mom and dad. Like, I suddenly felt like all this, what do I do with this leftover money, finally had an answer. And oh my God, it was incredible. For the full year after that, I did incredible. I had paid off about $8,000 or $10,000 worth of debt in a snap, because now I knew that I had thousands left over at the end of the month, and I could allocate X to debt, and I could allocate this to this sinking fund and this sinking fund, or this emergency fund, or I had enough money left over to start a business idea and see how that went. And then that would bring me more money, and then I would budget that. And it was the most incredible experience. I want to say I've been doing this financial education, budget, freedom journey since that fall of 2019. So 2019, 20, 21, 22, 23. So about 5 years now. And oh gosh, I feel like I learn something new every time. And there's so much to talk about and share. But that was my breakthrough moment when I went to the charge nurse's station and I asked if I could go home early because there was no reason for me to stay there. And I was told no. And that moment really was the catalyst for everything. That is what made me go home that night. The idea that as a grown-ass person, a professional, someone who is responsible, had to ask permission to be able to go home when there was no reason to stay. And then beyond that, the fact that a job can take advantage of you because they know most people are in that what do I do beyond pay bills mentality. I don't have a clue. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. I guess I just have $800 left over to just do whatever with. Okay, cool. I'll do that. And the idea that I was making more money at this point in my career than I had ever made before, and I still was in a bad spot because I had no clue. And until I educated myself, I was always going to be at the mercy of somebody telling me when my shift was going to start, when my shift was going to end, when I could go to lunch, when I could go home, if I could go on vacation at this time on this day, if I wasn't feeling well and I had to leave work early. That was a mark against me, my attendance. And I remember telling that to one of the nurses that oh God, it was towards the end of my career there at the hospital, and I was so depressed, and I had so much depression and anxiety and stress and PTSD that I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I had an ulcer so bad that when I burped, you could smell the stomach acid. It was terrible. And I remember thinking, I am just not well enough to participate in surgery and help my surgeon and have a mind quick enough if something were to go wrong. I just was shaky, and I was like, wasn't feeling well. And I was into my shift, maybe like, I don't know, 2 hours. And I thought, there's no way I can do another 8 hours. There's just no way. And so I went to one of the charge nurses, and the charge nurses change every time. It just depends on who's there on staff. And I looked at her, and I looked horrible. People kept telling me I looked horrible. It wasn't a secret that I wasn't doing okay. And I asked if it was possible for me to go home early because I was having a really hard time. And she looked at me without even skipping a beat and she goes, yeah, but it's going to count against you. And I'm like, what do you mean it's going to count against me? She goes, well, because you're leaving early, so that's going to count against you. And I just, I was just staring at her and I was just like trying to process what she was telling me. And I was like, I'm sorry. And I literally was this frank because I just was not understanding. So I needed direct conversation here. And I said, are you telling me that because I am sick and not well, that if I were to go home now, the company would punish me for being sick instead of staying and potentially being a liability during surgery? That's what you're telling me. And she looked at me dead in the eye and didn't even skip a beat. She goes, well, yeah. And I just looked at her. And I knew that it wasn't her because she was following the policy set in place by the company. The company had done this, had made these choices. And I just looked at her and I said, well, I guess I'm going to have to go home with a mark on my attendance then, because that's going to be more safer for the patient outcome than me staying here and feeling sick to my stomach and potentially passing out during surgery or dropping something. Really? It was such a frustrating experience the last year I was there that it really put a fire under my butt to learn about finances and to really get to a point in life where that never happened again. And I hate to say that, but towards spring of 2020, I think we all know what happened, and everything changed. So the the ability to, pardon me, I'm going to get a drink here. The ability to maintain my income disappeared because of the shutdowns and the lockdowns, and us not being able to do elective surgery anymore because all of the beds had to be routed to the ICU for the COVID wings. And I mean, literally overnight, it went from us having 50 surgeries a day to nothing. And nobody was making any money. And then it was people being laid off. And then it was people using all their PTO until there was nothing. And then it was the hospital trying to put us in a place where we didn't belong because they couldn't just pay us for what was going on. And those 3 years of being in the medical field where I thought, okay, now that I'm educating myself and I'm understanding about finances, I'm not in a place where my income is allowing me to do this. And it's because of the job field I was in. So I ended up leaving that job field for something totally different. Okay, so that was my breakthrough moment when I decided that I wanted to go home and I wanted to understand why at that point in my career, I was making the most money that I had ever made, and I still was under the control of other people telling me what to do and when I could go home. And let me tell you, that was an incredible day. And as I look back on the 5 years of my journey, that day still brings back the most incredible feelings and memories, because to this day, I still feel like when I had that moment, I unlocked something, like some secret to the universe that people don't talk about unless you're in the know. So that was my breakthrough moment. I wanted to understand my finances and budget beyond just getting paid and paying my bills and having this leftover money and just blowing it because I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do with it. I didn't understand about 401ks. I didn't really do any company matching because I didn't understand the point of it. This was in my mid-30s, you guys, and there's so little education about finances and investing and, sinking funds and emergency funds. There's so little education, if any, that there are millions of people out there who are in decent paying jobs and have leftover money, and they're not putting it in investment accounts. They're not maxing out their retirement accounts. They're not putting it into high yield savings accounts. Like it's just there and then they spend it and then next paycheck they just rinse repeat until they have some breakthrough moment and realize, oh my God, what have I been doing this entire time? Why didn't anyone teach me this? So that was my breakthrough moment. And what the heck am I gonna do to build my wealth? So, what is my plan to build wealth? Ha! I squished it in there. That looks like a 6, but it's an H. Wait, is it? Yes. Wealth. We know what that word means. So, what is my plan to build wealth? Well, I'm glad you asked this because I am in a place now where I have enough education to where I can tell you that. So, the things that I have learned in the last couple years about building wealth is that the only way to do this is really to start investing, because I have learned, and I think we're all in a place now where inflation has affected everybody to a point that it's pretty much undeniable now. Groceries has doubled, gas has gone up, the car bubble is happening, homes are overinflated, mortgage rates are overinflated. It's just bananas, right? So if you are saving, like say you have cash savings in your house, nothing's happening to that cash that's sitting in your house, okay? And I get it. I understand that you want to have some liquid cash in your house in case things go horrible and sideways, because keep in mind, the banks don't have to give you the money. You can put your money in the bank, but just know that the banks take your money and loan it out, and they make money off of your money. So that'll be a whole different video because a lot of people don't know that either, which again, it's not a surprise that people don't know that. It's not a surprise. So you can put your money in the bank, but they don't have to give it to you. So it's good if you want to have like some, money laying around the house that's liquid for situations, but don't expect that money to be an investment. Don't expect the money you keep in your house to make you money, okay? Because you can save your $100, $1,000 in your house, but you will never be able to cash stuff or cash save your way and outpace inflation. But you can keep up with the inflation by investing. So you can get, let's say, Ramit Sethi. If you haven't seen him, you should check him out. He's amazing. And read his book. Investing is about conservatively 7% returns, right? So we're at 5.5% inflation right now. I would check my phone, but I'm recording with it. So if you have your $100 sitting in your house, or your $10,000 sitting in your house, nothing's happening to it. It's not in a high yield savings account. It's not in an investment account. It's not in a retirement account. It's just sitting there. So from January to December, that $10,000 is still $10,000. In fact, your $10,000 has actually lost value month over month, because as inflation goes up, as the market changes, you're actually behind now. You're behind. So what my plan to build wealth is a couple things. So I plan on increasing my salary, increasing my income. I plan on working to build multiple revenues of income. And I plan to lower my taxable income for 2024 by increasing my retirement accounts, and then also maxing out my HSA account, because that is tax deferred as well. I plan on keeping on top of my investments in my 401k and my Roth. I used to have a mix of 50-50. So I had 50% of my investment going to stocks and 50% going to bonds. But the thing with your 401k and your retirement accounts and your investment accounts, well, we'll talk about your 401k and like your Roth and whatnot. If it's offered through your company, unless you are opting in to have people manage it for you, it doesn't get moved around. So for example, we all know that the stocks are not so great right now. So the 50% of my investment of my Roth and my 401k that was going towards stocks, month over month, kept going down. And I understand that stocks are a long-term game. Like for retirement, it's going to go up and down forever. I get that. But I'm a lot older than most young people who have accounts. So my time frame to compensate for the last 20 years is a lot shorter than it is if I was actually 20 years old. I'm 40 now. So my retirement is much closer than it would be if I was 20 years old. So even though I know that you hold stocks long term, just the fact that they're going up and down, to me, I don't have the time for that, for the compounding interest to really take effect. So what I did is I went into my 401k and my bonds, and I switched the investment mix from 50-50 to bonds and 50-50 to stocks to 100% bonds. And immediately I saw my investments start to go up because bonds are so strong right now with what's happening with the economy. Bonds are so strong. We're getting the highest yields on our high savings accounts and CDs than we've had in years because banks want to hold on to your money. They don't want you to spend it. So if you can find a bank that has a high yield savings account, that's where you should hold your cash, right? Like not all of it. You want to have some liquid, but if you have like sinking funds, for example, okay, put it in a high yield savings account, put it in a high yield CD. If you have an emergency fund. So I know that there's a lot of talk about having $1,000 emergency fund. Put that emergency fund in a high yield savings account, separate from your sinking funds, separate from your, oh shit, let's bounce fund, right? So that's the second thing I plan on doing. Increasing my income, paying more attention to my investments, increasing the amount of my investments. I am incredibly blessed to be with a company that gives me an incredible work-life balance, that gives me incredible benefits. And I have 3 different retirement and investment accounts that the company will match up to, I believe, 6%. So if I invest 6% and they invest 6%, they do matching for up to 6%. There's an extra 3%. So technically I can have 3 accounts, when I'm financially able to, up to 18% for each account. I know that sounds insane. I actually had to call the benefits office and double check with that and have them literally send me the packet of the information because I've never heard of a company matching to that amount. Never. So I plan on, when I increase my income, I'm going to pay off some debts and free up some money because I want that free money to go to increasing my match and increasing my investments. I plan on creating more revenue streams. And when I say that, I'm planning on making more intentional revenue streams. I'm not just going to willy-nilly start selling random stuff around the house and making a sale once or twice a month, or throwing up an online shop that I make random sales throughout the month. I am at the point in time where I want to be intentional with my time and the things that I give my attention to. And if I'm going to do like another stream of income, like let's say something selling online, or if people find the notebooks that I'm making and they want to buy the pages for their own debt tracking or their own monthly tracking, I can put it on Etsy and I can keep that consistent. What I would like to do is start working on a money psychology and emotions materials so that I can offer that to people, and they can start looking at why they do what they do, where they get their money history from. And then I would like to start coaching people, one-on-one or in group settings about how to empower themselves, learn how to find the patterns that they have, learn how to deconstruct those patterns, restructure their thought process to be successful and stop self-sabotaging. So that is how I plan on building my wealth, is by first experimenting on myself, okay, reinforcing that these things are real and that they work, and then creating educational materials for people to empower themselves, and then creating a safe place where I can coach people and help them find these random little holes and chinks in their armor that they may not even know is there, or if it's there, they don't really understand how it works. So that is how I plan on building my wealth. Now, I would love to hear from you all your experiences with this. I would love to hear from you all, what was your breakthrough moment or your catalyst? And what are you planning on doing to build your wealth? Now, when I say what are you planning to do to build your wealth, what are you doing at this season in your life with the information that you have, with the resources available? How are you planning on making even just a subtle change at first and then letting that compound over time? I would really love to hear your stories. I would really love to hear your experiences with your breakthroughs and your catalyst moments, how you're planning on making changes in 2024. And I'm really grateful to be part of a community where we can support each other and empower each other and cheer people on. And if someone's struggling with something, we can offer suggestions. And, maybe one of those things can be the thing that starts helping them get into a better place. So I know this video was a little long, but I wanted to be open and transparent. I wanted to be very honest about what that day was for me and how serious I was about educating myself and making changes, how I learned to even understand what spending categories I had. By going through those statements and highlighting different categories, how I learned to create categories, and I would total out the amount every single month from those statements, how much I was spending in those accounts, and then I used those accounts to build a monthly budget. And then it took about 3 months for me to really understand real numbers for my accounts, because when you look at those things, you realize I don't really have to spend this much for entertainment. I don't have to spend this much for clothes or, going to the salon. Like, I can put that money in other places that have more of an impact. So it takes some tweaking, but that was the first time that I'd actually done an actual monthly budget with my expenses and just household stuff and self-care and pets, and how I created those budgets, how I tweaked them, how I was able to understand the difference between sinking funds and an emergency fund and your oh shit fund. I'm leaving this job fund, I'm gonna do something else and find myself for a year. And then really understanding that when you have a company that offers matching for your investments in your retirement, or say you have stock options, take the time to call those people that your company works with and say, hey, I want to do this, but I'm not sure how to do this. And can you help me figure this out? And if they're not the most helpful people, there are plenty of places on YouTube where you can educate yourself, or, get audiobooks or rent books in the library. There's so many places to get education to empower yourself now that we don't have to be at the mercy of other people between the hours of 9 to 5. So I would really love to hear your stories. Thank you so much for sitting through this long one with me. And I can't wait to film another video with you all to show you what I plan to do with my next paycheck. And if you would like for me to go through in more detail what I did that night when I went home and how I did those steps, I would be happy to do it. Just drop me a comment, and if there's enough people, I'll go ahead and do that. But that's all for now. That's all for story time. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. I'm sorry if the camera's shaky here, but I just want to say thank you so much and have an incredible weekend, and can't wait to see you on the next video.